Williams says she hopes that the State Capture Commission headed by Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo will restore the damage that has been caused. She broke down as she opened up about months of what she calls torture at the hands of her former boss, Faith Muthambi. Williams retold of sustained emotional and verbal abuse by the former communications minister, saying she had needed the support of colleagues and medication to carry her through. She's also testified that the former president, Jacob Zuma, knew what Minister Muthambi was doing and protected her anyway. Well, our Chriselda Lewis spoke to her after that testimony and joins us now. Good evening to you, Chriselda. I mean, some of what we heard today seems really to have been designed to make sure that Phumla Williams would leave.
That's right. In fact, when I spoke to her just shortly after she completed her testimony, she was quite clear that she was to be removed in order to make way for someone who would toe the line. Because remember, Phumla Williams did not want to carry out many of the instructions that she was given by Faith Muthambi, and that then led to months and months of what seems to be a complete abuse of office in trying to make sure that Phumla Williams was frustrated enough to leave. Remember, she did testify as well that she considered taking early retirement in order to escape from what she called was absolute torture at the hands of the former communications minister.
I mean, of course, at one point, as you know, she was demoted from being the Director General to Deputy Director General and then asked to pay back some of the money. It's quite extraordinary. Let's go back to that moment when she broke down a little earlier today. Let's have a look.
I had panic attacks. I saw torture going through my body again. I never thought in this government people can do such things. I was tortured for weeks, and Muthambi did the same thing to my body. And that's why I wrote this letter, as a way of trying to get her to understand what she was doing. One, she was cheating the state because basically I was being paid because she wanted that procurement at all costs. She wanted to steal at all costs. That removing of all those functions, it was a ploy to remove the finance and procurement away from me. They knew that they have removed me from doing cabinet work. I was going to be a nuisance, and they decided that the procurement and the finances must be removed from this woman. And that's basically what they did.
I mean, Chriselda, I think the thing that came through for most people who are watching this was this absolute sense of betrayal that Phumla Williams felt, comparing this experience to the same torture that she went under the apartheid police.
You could hear lots of the noises coming from many of those who'd been sitting and listening to that testimony, Bongani, because when she detailed what, of course, she'd gone through as an ANC activist, and saying that what she went through, what Faith Muthambi had put her through, she started having reliving exactly what took place then. She says whenever she was driving and there would be a car that's passing by, that would just give her such a fright, and she would remember the kind of abuse that she was detailed. She could still hear the keys. And to liken that to what she went through then must have been a harrowing experience that this woman, who many have described as ethical. We saw a number of tweets from those who've testified before who said that Phumla Williams, in fact, was one of those people who stood up and said she was not going to carry out things that she believed were just wrong, ethically so and otherwise. So for her to liken that to what she went through during apartheid really had everyone absolutely extraordinary. And I think what's interesting now is that she wants this very commission to haul Faith Muthambi before it for her to answer.
Yes, indeed. I saw your interview with her after she gave testimony, and she says she not only wants Faith Muthambi to come and answer, she wants the former president to come and explain why it is that even though she told him what was happening to her, he did nothing and seems to have been protecting Muthambi anyway.
And in fact, she did say that she does believe that former President Jacob Zuma protected Faith Muthambi. She distinctly put it that way and said that she feels that with her political boss, she should have been able to get some kind of assistance from the former President Jacob Zuma. He knew, but he did absolutely nothing.
In fact, let's have a listen to what she was saying in terms of how exactly she framed that and how she detailed it.
The fact that Muthambi continued, President did nothing, and she continued to wreak havoc in the department. The President was not interested, and what I would insist, the President knew what was happening. And that is the reason it never bothered him that the post of a Director General is not being filled. It suited him that the status quo could be in that way.
That was, of course, you talking to Phumla Williams directly after she gave her testimony. Now, one of the things I think that was quite interesting in how she framed what she says Muthambi did, she calls it theft. I mean, you couldn't be more blunt than that, can you?
Absolutely. Said she had no regard for the state's resources. She was not interested in the people of South Africa and the portfolio itself that she wanted to fill. She said, basically, I think it was quite interesting where she described it and said that she had turned government communications basically into some kind of Hollywood where people came and just left. Nobody wanted to work within that department, and replaced people who were doing the job with people, I guess, who were not going to question the former communications minister about some of the requests that she made. So a great sense of betrayal, Bongani, I must add, that I felt in her voice. She felt betrayed by Faith Muthambi, by her comrades, as she put it, by former President Jacob Zuma, who she believes, of course, should have done something. So I think this really does tie quite a lot. It's all starting to sort of make some kind of sense with regard to, you remember what Themba Maseko had said about how the staff morale at government communications had basically taken a slump. And yes,
well, yeah, but she said, I'm going to quote from what she said. She said she wanted, referring to Muthambi now, that procurement unit at all costs. She wanted to steal at all costs. It was a ploy to remove finance and procurement away from me. Again, very blunt, very direct. She's not holding back.
She's not holding back, because I think this was the one moment that Phumla Williams was waiting for. She even begged for the indulgence of the commission to allow her to read that when she explained what she had basically gone through. And I think she really wants, at the end of the day, some answers, someone to come and explain exactly what should happen. But I think most of all, what recourse she thinks she can get out of everything is for Faith Muthambi to come and be hauled before this commission of inquiry.
Because she says the nightmares are still there. I mean, I thought that was startling. She says, in fact, she has to resist taking painkillers because she doesn't want to be an addict.
And it goes to, Bongani, I think, we're talking about looting of state from various state organs, but I think this is where the emotional aspect or the repercussions emotionally of what some public servants had gone through. This paints a clear picture. Remember previously when she had said that she'd walked into the office of the former CEO of Government Communications, Themba Maseko, and he was banging his head on the table. And she is now describing what seems to be absolute abuse by her senior and what she'd basically gone through emotionally. So I think it really paints a picture of the emotional side of the repercussions of state capture.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's been a big day at the state capture inquiry, and I think it's most extraordinary to note that Faith Muthambi remains a member of parliament. We'll see how much longer that will be the case.